to the guardians of the watchtowers of the east. We invoke thee. We summon and stir thee.
As if high school wasn't a crazy enough time filled with drama and petty betrayals, imagine if magic got mixed in with all those hormones. It would not be pretty, but it makes for a really good teen movie. Hey guys, what's happening? Jen here with Film Comics Explained. Today, we're taking a look at the classic 1996 film, The Craft.
When you're a teenager, you want magic to work. You want to believe that if you can just believe in something hard enough, it will happen.
Before we dive into the story, I want to talk a little bit about some of the real-world inspirations behind The Craft. It turns out some of the fantasy present in the movie is based in real life. Screenwriter Peter Filardi had just gotten done selling his script for Flatliners, which became a mega hit, and was starting to do some research on teen Satanist Ricky Kasso. Ricky Kasso, aka the Acid King, was a 17-year-old who had murdered his friend in the 80s while high on LSD. Since Kasso was big into heavy metal and the satanic panic was in full thrust at that point, it was a pretty big story. Filardi's script eventually turned into the 2000 film Ricky 6, but while it was being written, producer Doug Wick approached him about doing a different supernatural project. Still high off of the story of Satanism, drugs, and booze, Filardi channeled some of what he had been learning while researching Kasso into the story for The Craft. What's even more interesting is the story of Nancy Downs' character, who is based on an actual person Filardi knew growing up. Nancy was inspired by a real girl whose older brother lived in a trailer in their backyard and just had a hard go of it, he told Den of Geek. She's true to the character I wrote. She always embodied the earth element of fire. The person Filardi based Nancy on wasn't a witch or anything, but funnily enough, director Andrew Fleming said that he had a run-in with one at a studio. He told Huffington Post that he had upset a woman at a studio who told him she was going to cast a spell on him that would ruin his life.
To use witchcraft to actually have cause and effect in the world, to have a terrible revenge fantasy and have the revenge fantasy occur, that seems so true to your emotional life, and particularly when it's as raw as it is in adolescence.
This movie was actually really ahead of its time. Think about it. The Craft was pre-Scream, pre-Melissa Joan Hart's Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and pre-Charmed. Getting the movie greenlit wasn't easy. Not only were young adult movies not really in yet, but as producer Doug Wick told Huffington Post, it was still a lot easier to get movies about teenage boys made than teenage girls. Once production started, director Andrew Fleming did not hold back. He brought on real-life Wiccan Pat Devin to work as an on-set advisor. Devin was actually the one who wrote the incantations, and she took great care to make sure that everything was as inoffensive to the actual Wiccan culture as possible. And while screenplay writer Peter Filardi didn't have a witch consultant on the script, he put together plenty of his own research, reading books like Jean Boland's Goddesses in Every Woman and Scott Cunningham's Earth Power. He also mentioned listening to a lot of Hole's landmark grunge album, Live Through This, to channel the raw emotion he wanted to instill into his characters. As for the god Manon, he was made up. Fleming said that he specifically made sure that they didn't allude to any real deity, because it might have been offensive if we had used people's real gods. Our story begins when young witch Sarah Bailey moves to Los Angeles and transfers into St. Benedict's Catholic School. She's had a rough go of life. She previously attempted suicide, and tragically her mother died during childbirth. But she's ready to make a new go at life, and lucky for her, a cute popular boy named Chris Hooker has already started flirting with her. Or, well, maybe it's not so lucky. A group of outcast girls, Nancy Downs, Bonnie Harper, and Rochelle Zimmerman, approach Sarah and proposition her. Bonnie noticed that Sarah had some supernatural powers, and they had been eyeing her to become their fourth to complete their coven, which worships the god Manon. And Nancy warns her that Chris is not the kind of guy that Sarah wants to be around. Despite their offer and warning though, Sarah's not too keen on joining up with or trusting these goth girls. They hang out after school once, and things get intense fast. A vagrant holding a snake harasses Sarah and then gets hit by a car. The girls think they've somehow caused it to happen themselves and form a bond, but it's not long before Sarah gets an inkling that they may be in way over their head and leaves to meet up with Chris. It turns out Nancy was right. Chris is a total jerk, and after one date consisting of making out on a rooftop, he spreads fake rumors about Sarah sleeping with him. She's hurt, of course, but Nancy and the others comfort her and invite her to their spell circle.
Hey, Sarah. We're going on a field trip.
Miss Downs, I hate to interrupt your little social gathering.
They all have a few wishes they want to have come true via magic. Sarah casts a love spell on Chris to torture him a little and make him feel hurt like she felt. Bonnie is covered in burn scars and wants them magically gone. Rochelle wants revenge on the racist bully Laura, who targets her for being black. And Nancy, she lives in a trailer with her creepy, abusive stepfather and mother, and she wants the power to change that. It doesn't take long before it's revealed that the spells worked. Chris starts following Sarah around like a lost puppy, Bonnie's scars are completely healed, and Rochelle's bully starts losing all of her hair. Meanwhile, Nancy causes her stepdad to die of a heart attack, which lets her and her mom cash in on his generous life insurance policy and move out of the trailer park. Everything seems to be going great, but it doesn't take long before things get a little too good to be true.
When you done doing love spell?
When you open the floodgate, how do you undo it? You unleash something with the spell.
The girls go out to their local occult shop, and the owner, Lirio, warns them about their hubris. She lets them know that the negative magic they cast will come right back to them threefold, and that they must be careful. Of course, that doesn't deter Nancy or the others who have been riding high off their spell's success. Nancy buys a book called Invoking the Spirit, and the girls head out to the beach to make some animal sacrifices and call upon Manon. The invocation works, and Nancy becomes insanely powerful after being struck by lightning. She walks on water and starts cackling about how Manon is coursing through her veins. Meanwhile, a ton of beach sharks have washed up on the shoreline. Sarah's the only one who senses that she and the girls might have gone a little too far. For one thing, Chris keeps showing up at her house and incessantly calling her, and he's become a stalker who even attempts to rape her. Bonnie has become a total narcissist now that her scars are gone, and Laura has gone completely bald due to the spell Rochelle cast, and Rochelle is clearly a little freaked out by what she's caused.
Oh, wow, we're scared, Sarah.
Worst of all, though, is Nancy. She's become way too power hungry and is engaging in increasingly risky behavior. She tries to avenge Sarah, but Nancy's clearly taking it too far. She casts a glamour spell on herself to look like Sarah and tricks Chris into sleeping with her. Sarah ends up catching the two of them in the act, and during the confrontation, Chris understandably gets freaked out. Nancy, angered, uses her powers to throw him out of the window. Chris dies in the accident. By this point, Sarah is thoroughly freaked. She tries to cast a binding spell on Nancy, but it fails, and Bonnie and Rochelle turn against her.
Look, Nancy, people are dead, okay? Chris and Ray those were accidents.
Together, they cause Sarah to hallucinate, and even go so far as to trick her into thinking her family has died in a plane crash.
Where are my dad and Jenny?
I'll be seeing them soon. You're going to kill yourself tonight, my dear.
The three show up at Sarah's house and try to convince Sarah to kill herself, but though she's scared, Sarah eventually invokes Manon and fights back. She tricks Bonnie and Rochelle by showing them distorted reflections of themselves, showing them as scarred and balding. After scaring them off, she fights Nancy and successfully casts a binding spell on her for good. In the end, Sarah's the only one who gets to keep her powers. Manon takes the others' powers away because of the ways they abused them. Bonnie and Rochelle try to apologize to Sarah, but obviously she wants nothing to do with them at this point. As for Nancy, she's been committed to a psychiatric hospital, and it's safe to say that she won't be bothering Sarah ever again.
He gave me power! I can do whatever I want now! I can fly!
In a recent interview with Filardi, it was revealed that there had actually been a different ending written for the movie. In the original, Bonnie and Rochelle would have realized that Nancy had totally lost control and agreed to help Sarah. In the final fight, they would have ended up impaling Nancy on a coat hook, killing her. Wiccan consultant Pat Devon objected to the ending, saying that Nancy didn't deserve to die because she's not intrinsically evil. She's just out of control and fed up with being used and abused. Ultimately, I think the ending they went with was the right choice. After all, most people are bigger fans of Nancy than Sarah anyways, and I can't imagine any test audience would have liked seeing their favorite die like that. Besides, those final scenes where Fairuza Balk is thrashing about in a straitjacket are just too good to leave on the cutting room floor.
Certainly when Fairuza came in, she didn't audition. I just met with her and I just said, this is it. Truly believe Fairuza is one of the most talented people I've ever worked with. She just has this innate ability to inhabit a moment and take you on a journey.
Amazingly, even 26 years later, the craft still holds up really well. It's not easy for a teen movie to stay relevant. Lots of times they fold because they chase too many trends and just get too dated. But while there are unmistakably some 90s looks and music in the movie, it hasn't aged poorly at all. The core concepts that the movie touches on didn't go anywhere. Jerk-ass jocks, racism, class issues, abuse, mental illness, all those issues are still very relevant, which is part of why the legacy of The Craft still endures. Not to mention, the cast is full of timeless 90s baddies like Robin Tunney, Neve Campbell, Rachel True, and of course, Fairuza Balk. Like with most cult classics, the movie's greatness wasn't really recognized by critics when it came out. Some critics called it too campy. There's no such thing as too campy if you ask me, and said that some of the more blockbuster elements undercut the more serious themes. Despite the mixed reviews it received, The Craft was still a big box office hit. As mentioned before, the teen girl market was pretty neglected at the time it came out. Columbia Pictures didn't expect this $15 million movie to go on to gross $55.6 million, but young women came out in droves to see this film. Even today, The Craft still gets theatrical releases. In fact, the lead cast, minus Fairuza Balk, actually attended a reunion screening of the movie in 2013. The movie has inspired young girls to become witches themselves, inspired Katy Perry to write Dark Horse, and it even got itself a sequel in the form of The Craft Legacy in 2020. If I haven't made it clear yet, I adore this movie. But now, let's turn it over to you guys. What do you think of The Craft? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time!